This graph represents how affordable life is in Canada. The higher, the better. The lower, the more expensive. It's important you pay attention to what's happening here today. Both new and generational Canadians are leaving the country. But is it the right choice they're making? Will the Canadian dream survive, as this yellow line suggests? It's the first time you will hear from all levels of government in one place, businesses as well as new Canadians, to find the answers we're all looking for.
In a country as wealthy as Canada, I believe that everybody should have a home, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
Get to the yes or get to the no.
Rethink what that Canadian dream is actually about. Is it about going in debt?
It's not a quick fix. It's going to take some time to correct it.
This is also one of the reasons why so many people choose Canada as their home.
Where did it all start? Imagine we're flying on a plane. It's comfortable, nice view, drinks, but all of a sudden turbulence. It's rocking the plane one side to another. This is what happened to the world during the pandemic, and my story was probably no different to yours.
My life almost fell apart. When I moved to Canada back in 2019, was studying, was working, and then the pandemic happened. As many people, I lost my job, I didn't know what to do, I thought about moving back. Then your government stepped up and started issuing support for people like me. I invested that support to start a business. And now I employ people, pay taxes, so fast forward to today, that necessary painkiller then, now it caused chronic pain of inflation and unaffordability. Do you regret that fiscal policy?
No, and I would actually disagree that the source of some affordability challenges or even inflation are being primarily driven by pandemic spending. Look, certainly public spending can factor into it, but you got to think of the counterfactual. Had we not stepped up to invest to make sure families could put food on the table so businesses could keep their doors open, the economic contest of Canada would have been dramatic and extremely negative. It's not just a factor of what expenditures you put out in a given year, but where you sit relative to others in the global economy. And Canada has the healthiest balance sheet of any G7 economy. We're projected over the next couple of years to lead the G7 in economic growth, and it wouldn't have been possible but for those investments. I actually think one of the most important things that we've done in my 8.5 years as a Member of Parliament was deciding to be there for Canadians in their time of need, and I think that's going to set us up for success over the next few years, despite some very real challenges people have been experiencing over the past few years.
If you're looking to move to Canada or have lived in the country your whole life, you must have concerns around the future. By the end of this video, I'll get you clear answers and programs to set you up for long-term success, whether you're renting or buying. If you're in the first group, it's important to know about the federal government's Renters' Bill of Rights that Minister Fraser explained in simple words.
The Renters' Bill of Rights is an idea that we want to advance to put a floor of protections beneath everybody who rents in this country. But it's going to require us to negotiate with provinces and territories because they actually hold the legal jurisdiction to implement a tool such as a Bill of Rights.
Are they willing to negotiate?
Well, I think most are, and in fact different provinces have different versions of this themselves, but the rules will vary between jurisdictions, and even within a jurisdiction, people may not have an awareness of what rights they are entitled to. So if you want to deal with the rights that you have in terms of the notice period before an eviction, the time that you have should a life event cause you to be unable to pay your rent and you need a grace period. A lot of landlords are actually very gracious in dealing with their tenants on a voluntary basis, but some aren't. And we believe we've got to work with jurisdictions across Canada to use the legislative authority that they have to actually protect people who are dealing with a scenario where they're not being treated fairly. But because we can't legislate with the federal authorities we have in this space, we want to make the access to certain federal investments in housing contingent upon provincial governments actually implementing the solutions that they have within their control, including establishing a Bill of Rights for renters. One of the problems that we have in Canada is there are a lot of apartments that exist at prices that some people can afford that are being bought up, being renovated, and having people be kicked out with limited notice or different levels of notice that exist between different jurisdictions, so the landlord can then charge a much higher price than the person was paying for before. Now, if somebody needs to conduct ordinary repairs, I understand that, and we don't want to limit their ability to take care of the building. But we want to crack down on the practice of kicking people out of their homes just so you can raise the rent and make more money as a landlord, rather than actually adding to the housing supply.
It's important you understand what this means for you and me. First, no more rent evictions. It's okay to do home repairs as a landlord, but you cannot use it as an excuse to kick people out and increase the rent. Rent pricing history will create transparency for you to negotiate your rent. And the most interesting, now we'll be able to count timely rent payments toward qualifying for a mortgage. If you want to buy a home, there's a lot of unique insights from the Minister of Housing, but before that, I prepared a big bonus.
Minister, how do you feel about free rent?
Look, it's not too many things in life are free, but if somebody were to propose it, I'd be happy to see the beneficiaries from it.
Today, I'm going to announce something that you actually inspired me to. Together with Live.Rent, Canada's safest rental platform that verifies landlords and listings, we decided to give out $5,000 to 5 lucky viewers of this video.
Besides making renting safer, what makes Live.Rent unique is that everything is in one place. You can search for verified listings in different cities across Canada. You can chat with landlords. You can apply in a few clicks, sign standard lease agreements, and even you can make rent payments on the platform, which takes a lot of the headache away. That's why I highly recommend that you check out Live.Rent. And now back to the conditions of the giveaway.
All you need to do is to have a lease agreement in Canada, like this video, click on the link in the description to sign up for the giveaway, and get your $1,000 check to help you with your rent and make living more affordable. What do you think about that?
Look, that's extremely generous. I'm happy that there's going to be 5 lucky people out there who are going to get a break on the rent. I think there's a lot of people who could use it.
It's a little small measure from my side, but you're doing big things. Let's talk about that.
I'm happy to.
Buying a home in Canada may seem out of reach. At least it does to me. And it did to my fellow immigrant from Ukraine, Victor. But through a mix of mindset shifts, hard work, and leveraging government programs, he achieved his Canadian dream, and I think we can learn from him.
My name is Victor, I'm a marketer, I live in Toronto, and I run a YouTube channel about life and immigration to Canada. I was born and raised in Ukraine, in a beautiful city by the Black Sea, Odessa. That's my hometown. I came to Canada when I was 22, back in 2016, without any friends, relatives, or connections. I had to start my life from scratch. I would even say that I had to start from the bottom, because my English at that time was not good at all. And also I lived in Scarborough. And all I had at that time was motivation, because all I wanted to do is to build a better life for myself and my family. Of course, at that time, my Canadian dream was to become a successful professional, to build business and network that could help my community to thrive and get better results. And of course, one of my goals and dreams was to become a homeowner and buy my first property in Canada. As long as I was living in Toronto and I saw how the housing market was going up and up each year, I thought it would be more and more complicated for me to get my foot into the housing market myself. Back in 2021, I was finally able to save about 10% down payment for my first property. But buying in Toronto was still very tight on budget. So instead, we've decided to invest in Montreal's market. Moving forward, I moved back to Ukraine for some time, and then the war started and I came back to Canada at the end of 2022. Last year I got my mortgage license and I'm back in Toronto now, helping young families to make their Canadian dream of home ownership come true. Of course, for many people this is a very hard time right now to buy a property, and I understand how hard that can be when you cannot buy a property in the city you live in. But in general, it's still doable if you plan your finance, if you save using FHSA account, and if you do your numbers. And that definitely can speed up your way to home ownership. And at the same time, we all hope that the government will help first-time home buyers to make their Canadian dream come true. This is also one of the reasons why so many people choose Canada as their home.
I recommend to check out Victor's YouTube channel if you're looking into getting a house. But as he said, let's ask Minister Fraser about how the government is helping us, regular people, buy a home.
Curious to see what your government wants to do for regular Canadians immediately, not the housing accelerator funds you give out to cities or provinces, but Canadians. What can they access to buy a home, to make it affordable?
So look, thanks for this question. I think it's important to me that if I'm going to say that we've actually made progress towards solving the housing crisis, that a young person today who wants to own a home will actually believe they can and will actually start saving for it. So there's a number of things we've done to, in the short term, help people who want to buy their first home. The first is trying to help people build credit if that's a stumbling block for them. It's not a problem for everybody, but for a lot of young people who don't necessarily have a history of different bills or loans that they've taken out, they do rent. And I think if you've been paying your bills on time, that should count for something.
Exactly.
So we're making changes, particularly around open banking and consumer-directed finance. It's going to make it easier for your rental history to count towards your credit, so you can actually get a mortgage when you go. But it's not enough just to deal with your credit history. We have to help people save up for a down payment. We've created the First Home Savings Account, which is a tax-free opportunity for people to put money into account, both tax-free in and tax-free out. And we've seen more than 750,000 young people sign up for one of these tax-free savings accounts toward the purchase of the
How
first
much can
home.
they save up tax-free?
Like $8,000 a year that will help them put money away. And that is deducted from your income, kind of like an RRSP when it goes in, but like a tax-free savings account when it comes out.
So what's the top?
So if it earns $40,000 towards the down payment for your first home. The second piece is changing the rules around the home buyers plan through the RRSP program. It will allow you, if you have some money saved up in an RRSP, to take that out up to $60,000 to put towards a down payment. And there's a longer period of time before you have to start paying that back into your RRSP as well. But we also want to help people reduce their monthly mortgage costs by stretching out the amortization periods for new builds from 25 years to 30 years. That just means your monthly payment will come down by a couple $100 a month. So we're trying to follow a person along the journey of buying a home rather than making it convenient for the person who administers the system. We want to make it convenient for the person who uses it by focusing on things like your credit score, like your down payment, like your monthly payment, to have it grounded in a real person's experience.
Real people can access real programs, both federal and provincial, to help get a down payment. I had a chance to sit down with the leader of Nova Scotia's government to discuss exactly that. Before that, please make sure to like this video and comment below your thoughts about the topic of home ownership and this new format. If you'd like to connect, my Instagram and LinkedIn should be up here somewhere. For our Chinese audience, scan this QR code for WeChat. Back to the video.
You know, through government policy, we try to make sure that there are opportunities with, you know, mortgage down payment programs where we can help somebody get into the home for the first time by supporting them to get a down payment through government programming. But while they're renting, you know, we have to be conscious of the rents that are happening too, right? We've had a rent cap here in the province. We're trying to kind of wean our way off of that in a way that doesn't really cause a lot of disruption for renters and for landlords.
Imagine a family of two, a nurse and an admin assistant, making only $80,000 a year combined, that dream of buying their own home. You may think it's not possible, but through using all the programs that both Minister Fraser and the Premier spoke about, they purchased a house in Nova Scotia for $360,000 with very little of their own money down. There is one problem though. You may think, yes, they could do it in Nova Scotia, but what about big cities? I can't move somewhere else. My job is not flexible. First, let's figure out what is making the price so high and then talk about how we can fix it. Among many factors, real estate developers mention time.
In today's world, I would say it takes about 12 months to go from conceptual, where you've already had that back and forth with the city to make sure you understand the rules and you're kind of on the same page, to get to detailed design. Once you've figured out what you can build and you understand what the rules are, then the baton's in our hand. That's just the design work. You know, we'd be your architects, your structural engineers, your mechanical engineers, creating all the drawings that are ready to be built, essentially.
If you take out a loan as a builder to build, and the permitting process takes 2 years, the loan that you got, the terms of your financing, might not be good for the building that you've got to put up 2 years later when you get your permits. Through the Housing Accelerator Fund, we put federal money on the table to incentivize changes around municipal zoning, around municipal permitting, to adopt new digital systems, and to allow for different kinds of homes without having to go through the process of applying to your municipal council, which can slow you down by a year or two.
Cities issue those permits, so it'd be unfair to exclude them. Therefore, you should hear from a Halifax city councillor who served as deputy mayor, and she expressed some concerns.
The municipality has been working very hard to increase permits and get more permits out the door, but the problem we're seeing is in the completions and actually getting those units finished and out in the marketplace for rental or for purchase. So I think what we need to do is actually sit down with the provincial government and look at all of these complex problems and work together on those solutions. Because unfortunately what's been happening is the provincial government is making changes and working on things in silo, and the municipality is trying to advance issues within our own realm of authority. And when we don't have enabling legislation, we can't put in place creative solutions. We can't be flexible and nimble. And I think that's the biggest barrier to the municipality.
Let's travel back in time to the 60s. Elvis, the civil rights movement, and less people, so less pressure on housing. But now the challenges are bigger than ever. You know what else happened in the 60s? The new Canadian flag was adopted. Modern and forward-thinking. And just like then, our leaders today look into innovation of the future to solve the crisis.
With some background in AI, I see a way where we can have a technology that would compare A to B, A being the proposed project, B being the legislation, and then either green light or return the proposal to the developer. Is that something you're looking into?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely open to anything that speeds up the process, right? So first off, we've tried to address like the system, the bylaws and the system. But the next step, I guess, would be AI and technology to kind of speed things through and support the people who are making those decisions.
So there's a couple of things we're working on now. One of them is actually the digitization of the building code. We've got a good partnership in British Columbia that we want to expand nationally that actually will tie the permitting process to the requirements of the building code in a given province. So you know when you're going through the process, A, it's happening quickly, it's happening digitally, but you have certainty that it's actually going to meet the standards for approval because it's baked into a single process. I actually see huge opportunities for AI to leverage some of the federal properties across Canada through a system we're going to be making public very soon to identify where the best parcels of land are for new buildings. There's also huge opportunities to use AI and tech in the actual design of buildings to make sure that we're accounting not only for efficiency and design from an environmental point of view, from a labor and cost point of view, but actually to make sure that we have a lead on the supply chain to provide the materials and potentially even the labor force to build out the homes that exist in a timely way. So it's all connected, and AI is a massive tool that will help us better understand how to make the most of the opportunity that we have.
AI, technology, innovation, this is what I believe Canada should be known for. But none of this is possible without talented people. Therefore, I had to ask about the future of immigration.
You were the Minister of Immigration, now the Minister of Housing. Is Canada closing its immigration door? If so, what's the goal of it?
No. If you're not Indigenous in this country, your family came from somewhere else. Mine came about 250 years ago. Yours may have come more recently. It doesn't make one of us more Canadian than the other. 100% of our labor force growth is coming from immigration. Quarter of the doctors, more actually, in this country came from another country.
Nurses?
Nurses, yeah, it's actually about a third of the doctors, a quarter of the nurses. The skilled tradespeople who will help build the homes. We will still have to rely to some degree on newcomers. But there are challenges that we have to address. We have to recognize that with our temporary immigration programs, there's been some exploitation that's been going on in this country. I look at the numbers that certain academic institutions have been bringing in through the international student program, and I see that a single community in Ontario doesn't have the capacity to welcome 35,000 new students, notwithstanding the fact that the local educational institution applied for that many study permits. We're going to move forward by continuing to welcome newcomers as an essential part of our economy, as essential components of our community, but we're going to insist that if you are an institution or an employer who wants to benefit from certain programs, that you take some ownership and make good on your responsibilities to support people who are coming, including by assuring they have housing options.
Housing options can be so multifaceted. Have you thought about looking at it from a different perspective? Maybe not everyone needs a large home with a yard. I actually started exploring modular housing as an option and got surprised by the low cost.
So for like a 2-bedroom module, we're talking about 500-600 feet, economical. Like it should be, like end customer should be able to buy it, and with it delivered, with the shipping and everything, around $100 square feet, so $50,000-$60,000. So it is to be expected that if the land is not, like if we exclude the cost of the land, that the construction with the materials, $100,000 is fully attainable.
I think that modular will be one of those things that people will start to lean a little bit more towards, try and move faster as well.
Can you go high-rise with modular?
You can. There's some people doing it. They've done hotels, I know. They've done them locally. There's one in Newfoundland that was done modular. Supplier was actually at Europe on it.
That's one view, but if you still want that standard Canadian dream home, Pam Lovelace, who's running for mayor of Halifax, explained a new approach to how that can be achieved.
Rethink what that Canadian dream is actually about. Is it about going in debt to have a house that at the end of the day isn't going to net you the benefits, not going to give you the equity that you need? Because over time, you've lived in it for so long on a fixed income that you can no longer support yourself, you can no longer maintain the building. That's not the Canadian dream.
She wants more people to explore multi-generational housing. Imagine you want a big house, but cannot afford it, and a retired person living in that house who lost a spouse may be in a similar situation. So you come together to care for the home and get equity.
Well, I think New Canadians are a great example for us because many New Canadians are used to living together, used to living in intergenerational spaces. You know, people who have had the opportunity to live 3 and 4 generations within one family. There's lots of places where that exists. But I think what happens is when people move here, they think that they have to have that golden house by themselves. That's unfortunate because the disconnection, I think, is what creates that separation, because then you end up with the empty nesters who are overhoused.
How do you see the future of the Canadian dream? Is it dead?
No, I am as big a believer in Canada as you're ever going to find. I look at the enormous opportunities that this country holds. I don't want to ignore the extraordinary challenges people have been having for the last couple of years as inflation is making it hard for them to cover the basics. But show me a country that is positioned for success more than Canada. We have trading relationships that are stronger than any other country in the world. We are blessed with an abundance of natural resources. We have a clean grid that will attract industrial opportunities. We have the most educated workforce in the world. The resources in the Arctic, but we have to build enough homes for the people who will power our economy if we're going to maximize our potential. I believe that we can solve the housing crisis, sincerely. And I believe it because I spend most of my time dealing with people who are actually implementing solutions in their community right now. In a country as wealthy as Canada, I believe that everybody should have a home, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
It's difficult right now. There is turbulence, but instead of jumping out of our Canadian plane with a parachute hoping to land somewhere better, I'm convinced that we can persevere together. Canada is you and me. Our life is in our hands. Through different programs and a new way of thinking, the Canadian dream will survive. If you'd like to get $1,000 toward your rent, I strongly encourage you to take part in Live.Rent's giveaway. The link for all the details will be in the description to this video. I've been a big supporter of their mission to eliminate rental scams and help all of us find a home. Please share this video with someone interested in becoming a homeowner one day. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching.